Hello and welcome back to Vector's All Things PC-lint Plus YouTube series. Once again, I am Jacob Colapietro, a field applications engineer here at Vector. This is part 4 of our series where we will be covering how you can integrate your PC-lint setup into a couple different IDEs. In the last video, we discussed some additional PC-lint options that you can use for your setup, so go check out that video if you'd like to learn more about that topic. And let's get started. So before we jump into any of the integrations, I actually just wanted to go over a bit of the what and the why. What IDEs can you integrate with, and why would you even want to do one? So what's supported? So in theory, virtually any IDE could be integrated with if the IDE supports that and if you manipulate PC-lint's output correctly. So we saw in the last video that PC-lint's a very customizable tool, and that even goes down to the way the messages are output from PC-lint. So you can manipulate those to integrate with pretty much anything. But for the actual answer, the 6 IDEs that are listed here on this slide are what's documented. So we have IAR, Kyle, MPLabX, Sager, and then there's VS Code, which we're going to cover today, and then any Eclipse-based IDE, which will also be covered today. I'm going to be doing tasking. You can do any Eclipse-based. So in the PC-lint manual, there's a section with exact instructions on what you need to do for each of these integrations. So they're very easy to follow with stuff you can basically copy and paste to integrate with them. So that's actually pretty much what I'm going to be doing today. So great, why would you even want to do one of these integrations? Well, if you remember back a couple of videos, the PC-lint output we were getting was just output into the terminal window of VS Code. So this output looks pretty rough and it's tough to go through and really make any use of, I think. So for starters, the integrations look a lot better. And they're also a lot clearer. So you'll see that the warnings and errors are very clear in the output window, and it's a lot easier to make sense of. Okay, but in the last video, we went over how you can output to an HTML or an XML, and that looks better than the terminal output, so why wouldn't you just do that? Well, 2 things. With some of these integrations, you can actually do both of them, so you can do the integration and then also output to an HTML or an XML or something. But also the HTML and XML output doesn't offer up the double-click navigation that most of these integrations do. So with this feature, you can double-click on any of the output analysis in the output window, and it'll bring you right to the line that you need to go to. So this just makes your review of the PC-lint findings much more efficient, as it allows you to go straight to the problem and make better use of your findings. All right, so I'm going to be starting with the VS Code integration. We've been doing all of our work in VS Code so far during the series, so I thought it'd be a good starting point for us. So as a reminder, everything that I'm going over today is pulled directly from the PC-lint manual. So please check out sections 2.3.16 through 2.3.21 to see the integrations we go over today, as well as the others I mentioned earlier. So the VS Code integration is specifically in section 2.3.20, and I have that pulled up here. So you can see this is the section, and within this section, there's 3 files that are laid out: vscode.lnt, settings.json, and tasks.json. And below this, there's just instructions for making these files. So in essence, what we're going to be doing is creating these 3 files and then copying and pasting the contents directly from the manual over to VS Code. So what are we actually doing? We're utilizing the VS Code tasks feature in order for us to implement this PC-lint integration without an extension. So with this, we'll be able to get full output in the terminal window and the problems window. And you can also double-click navigate this output, and all of the issues that are output will be underlined within the code. So the 3 files that I just mentioned, vscode.lnt, settings.json, and tasks.json, work together in order to accomplish this task. So the vscode.lnt is just going to reformat the PC-lint output into something that VS Code can use. The settings.json sets up a few variables and settings, and the tasks.json then uses those settings in order to actually carry out the task. So let's make 3 files. It's as simple as that. So for the vscode.lnt, I just made a file called vscode.lnt. And just copy and paste it over from the manual. So literally went here copied this, pasted it into here. And again, as I said, all this does is reformat the output from PC-lint into something that VS Code can then use. All right, so the next file we need is the settings.json. I already have one here as well as the task.json, but I'll show you how you can automatically generate a settings.json. So to do that, we'll have to go to View, Command Palette, and then go to Open User Settings, and click on this option with JSON. And that'll generate a settings.json for you. It's empty, but it'll generate one for you. So then all you need to do, once again, come to the manual, copy this, go back to VS Code, paste it in there, and you'll have your settings.json. Again, I already have one set up, so don't need to do that. So one thing you'll notice about the difference from what I just copied over to what I have here is these first two lines you're going to have to change. So from what is copied from the manual, you'll see it has C path to PCLP.exe and then path to VSCode.nt. So obviously those aren't paths to anything. So all I did in mine for the PCLP_exe was give it the path of the batch script that I've been running throughout this series. So you can do that if you're running PC-lint through a script, or you can actually point it to the PC-lint executable underneath your install. So for the next one, it's VSCode_LNT. You just provided the path to the VSCode.LNT that we just created. So this file that we just created, provide the path in here as so. So once you do those two things, the settings.json's all set. So just going to delete this one since I don't need it. Okay, now for the tasks.json. So for this, we're going to have to go to File, Preferences, Tasks, and this automatically created a task.json for me. This might not happen for you. There might be a drop-down menu that shows up right here. If that's the case, there should be an option that's Others. Select that option, and then you'll get this file generated. So once again, go to the manual, copy, and paste that here. And there you go. Tasks.json's all set up. Once again, I already have it here. So you might be wondering, why do I have both of these files set up already? Well, I didn't want to go through the process of moving them. So the last thing that you need to do before this task can work is you need to move the tasks.json and the settings.json into a directory called .vscode. So this directory needs to be one level beneath the project directory. So for me, PCLP_project is the main directory that I'm running all of this setup out of VS Code in. So all I did was create a directory called .vscode and then move the settings.json and the tasks.json into here. So with that all set up, we can then run this task. So what is this task actually doing? Well, this task, we're just telling VS Code we want to run PC-lint on an opened .cpp file. And by that, I mean one that's open in the viewer of VS Code. So all I've done is gone through my source code, selected this configuration _ impl.cpp. I have it open right here. Just scrolling through, maybe I'm change some code in this file today, just looking over stuff. So to run the task, all I need to do is go to View, Command Palette, Tasks, Run Task. So just click on Tasks, Run Tasks, and then you'll see our PC-lint Plus task is right there. This might not be the top option for you. It might be a little bit lower, but I've been using it today, so mine's top. So all this is going to do is run PC-lint on this open file here. So just on this file, not my whole project. So once again, View, Command Palette, Tasks, Run Task. Then all you need to do is click it. And then you'll see PC-lint will start running on this single file. So this is going to take a moment, and I'll be back once it's done to show you what the output looks like. So our PC-lint task just finished. So what did it give us? Well, you can see we have this terminal window here. This is kind of like the output we were getting before. So nothing too different here. But if you look up here, you'll see we have this problems window. If I click on that, we have some different formatted PC-lint output. And the best part is you have each file listed that PC-lint found some output for. And each file has a drop-down menu where you can see all of the findings for that file. So you can see the reds are the errors, the yellows are the warnings, and the blues, if I scroll down a little bit further, are the supplementals and the notes, just a little bit of extra information on top. So one thing you'll also notice about these messages is they each have their PC-lint numerical ID. So you'll know which number actually goes with those messages if you wind up wanting to, do some suppressions or something. One thing I'd also like to mention is to not be alarmed by the amount of files that show up here. So as you can see in this file, if I scroll up all the way to the top, there's a bunch of headers listed here. So what PC-lint will do is actually go through each of those headers and let you know of any findings it finds in those header files. So don't be alarmed about the big list of files. So the last thing I'd like to point out is for all of these errors, it's very simple to go directly to where they are. All you need to do is just click on it, and it brings you directly to the line where the error is occurring, and it even has the message right next to it. So it's very easy to navigate these findings and much easier than before. So this was very easy to set up. All we had to do was set up those 3 files and then copy and paste the information over. And then it gives you this great PC-lint output that will make your findings a lot more efficient. Okay, so we've just seen the VS Code implementation. Now what about Eclipse-based IDEs? Well, for this, I'm going to be using the TriCore TASKING IDE, which is an Eclipse derivative. And just as a note before we move a little bit further, you should be able to follow this workflow for any Eclipse-based IDE. So I just want to make that clear before we get started. You don't have to be using the TriCore TASKING. It can be any Eclipse-based. So Eclipse IDEs can be found in section 2.3.19 in the PC-lint manual, as you can see here. It looks similar in the VS Code section, just a couple things we're going to have to copy and paste over, as well as steps to follow in order to implement the integration. All right, so the first thing we're going to need to do, same as the VS Code implementation, is create an indirect file called eclipse.lnt instead of vscode.lnt. So I just created this simple Hello World project for tasking. And you can see here I have this lint directory. And within it, I have the co-gcc files that we've grown familiar with over the series, as well as the eclipse.lnt that I just created. And normally when you're using tasking, you'd probably have some tasking derivative of these compiler configurations. But I'm just using the GCC one just because we've already had it set up. All right, so I created a file called eclipse.lnt. And you can see that here. So obviously when you create the file, it's going to be empty. So all you need to do then is go over to our PC-lint documentation and just copy this here. And then move it over, paste it, save that, and then that's all set up. Okay, from there, we're going to need to do 2 things. The first is set up an error parser, and then we're going to need to add PC-lint as build option. So first, we're going to work on setting up PC-lint error parser. So we're going to need to go to Window, Preferences, and then C, C++, and then Build and Settings. And then within the settings, you'll see error parsers, discovery. Maybe you guys will have a couple different options in your Eclipse-based IDE, whatever derivative it is. So all we're going to need to do here is select Add. And when you select Add, you should see a new dialog pop up where you give it a name. And so for mine, I just did PC-lint Plus. And then you can double click on that, and you'll see some options down here. These are the error parser options. So this is where you actually tell your Eclipse-based IDE what pattern to expect for errors or warnings or informations. And this is just a regex pattern. So this will be empty when you first select it. So all you need to do is select add 3 times. So it'll be add, 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 and they'll all show up as errors. I'm just going to delete these because I already have them. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is leave 1 warning, and then the next you're going to change to warning. and then info. So you just double click on these and you could change them to either error, warning, info, or ignore. So you should have one for each, error, warning, and info. So that's all set up. And then the next thing we need to do is tell Eclipse what pattern to expect. And luckily, these can be found in your PC-lint manual. So these can be found right below our Eclipse indirect file right here. So you can see it has this all laid out. So we have the severity for each, so error, warning, and info, and then the pattern for each. So for error, you're just gonna copy this pattern, bring it over to tasking or your Eclipse-based IDE, paste it in here. Then for warning, same thing, come over, copy, paste it into here, and then same for the info. And then the last thing you're gonna need to do is add $1, $2, and $4 to file, line, and description respectively. It's the same for all three of these options. So you just need to do all three of those the same way. So once that's all set up, you can go ahead and hit apply and OK. I'll just hit cancel in my case since mine's already set up. All right, so our error parser is set up. So the next thing we need to do is then add PC-lint Plus as a build option. All right, so to add PC-lint Plus as a build option, we're going to need to go to Project and Properties. Then we're going to go to the C++ Build tab. And this will lead us to a spot where we can edit our Eclipse build options, so any of our configurations. You'll see the typical debug and release here in this drop-down menu. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go to Manage Configurations. And we're going to be adding a new one for PC-lint Plus, so we select New. And so we're going to need to give it a name. So I'll do PC-lint Plus. You don't need to give it a description, but I'm going to just analyze current file using PC-lint. All right, and the last thing we're going to want to do is make sure that this top bullet is selected in this copy settings from option, and it's set to debug. So the existing configuration is debug. So we're going to hit OK. And the last thing we want to do in here is select our PC-lint Plus build configuration that we just made and hit set active, and then hit OK. Then we're going to need to go into this drop-down menu, select our PC-lint Plus build. That way we can edit the settings for this. So there's a couple things that we're going to need to edit here. So in this first Builder Settings tab, the first thing we're going to want to do is uncheck this Use Default Build command. And you can see this Build command dialog box is grayed out when it's checked. When we uncheck it, we're able to edit it. So I've already set up my build command and I have it copied. I'm just going to paste it in here and then walk you through what I set up. Make this a little bit bigger. All right, so what do I have set up here? First thing I have is my PC-lint Plus executable. So just the location of our PC-lint Plus executable. So just go into your install, note where it is, and copy the path, paste it here. Next thing I have is a -i option. And if we remember back, -i's are used to include directories to give visibility to that directory to PC-lint Plus. So what I've done is just pointed it to this lint directory here within my project. So I just did -i and then the path to this lint directory. That way I have visibility on our Eclipse LNT and then our compiler configuration. So after that -i, I have the Eclipse indirect file and then the compiler configuration. So that build command should be all set. All right, the last thing we're going to want to do on the builder settings is uncheck this generate make files automatically option. All right, so then we're going to move to the behavior tab. The first thing we're going to want to do here is uncheck this enable parallel build option. This normally supplies an option to speed up your builds in Eclipse. However, this will throw an error in PC-lint since PC-lint can't recognize the option that it adds to your build command, so we want to get rid of it here. Leave this stop on first build error checked. And then we're going to want to uncheck build on resource save auto build. If this is checked, uncheck it. And then we're going to uncheck clean as well. All right, the last thing we're going to do for this build incremental build, we're going to get rid of all here. And there's one more thing in our PC-lint documentation that we're going to have to copy and paste over to here. So I'm just going to go there. And if you scroll down a little bit from where we saw our error patterns, you'll see this step 10 that has in the checked build incremental build, and then something for you to add here. So it's going to be this $ selected resource location. Just going to copy that and then paste it over here into tasking. All right, great. So our build configuration for PC-lint Plus is now all set up. The last thing that we're going to have to do in here is go into the C++ build drop-down menu, go to settings, and then you'll see two things, binary parsers and error parsers. And you'll see a list of options, and at the bottom you should see our PC-lint Plus build error parser. So we're going to want to select that and do move up so it's above this tasking error parser. And then we're going to just check the box. So that way our error parser is actually set to be used by our PC-lint Plus build configuration. All right. So now everything's set up. We have our PC-lint Plus build configuration, and it's set up to use our PC-lint Plus error parser that we set up previously. So with that all set up, I'm going to hit apply and OK. So now all we need to do is select the source that we want to run PC-lint Plus on. So I'm just going to do this hello world example.cpp, just a simple hello world C++ file. I added this int num equals 0 because it's just an unused variable. And PC-lint normally doesn't like that, so it should give us a little bit extra analysis here. And then all I need to do is select this build all button, or you can go into project and select build all. So once that builds, you'll see we have some output in this console window here, which is normal to be expected from PC-lint Plus. But then we can move over to this problems tab. And then you'll see some prettier, more easy to go through output similar to VS Code. So it's the same thing as VS Code. We have our errors, our notes, some warnings. A difference here is they're not all grouped up by file. And by that I mean there's no drop-down menu like there was in VS Code where you just have the file name at the top and then you select the drop-down. You'll see all of the errors for that specific file. They're not as grouped together here, which can be a little bit annoying, but the output's still pretty. It still has the click navigation. So, if we want to look at a certain error, select this warning, it tells us which line the error shows up on. Yeah, it's just kind of similar to the VS Code setup. It gives you some nice output here. It lets you be more efficient, go to that exact line that you want to see all the errors. All right, so that was the Eclipse-based IDE integration. All right, so to recap today, we went over IDE integrations. And more specifically, we went over how to integrate with VS Code as well as Eclipse-based IDEs. We also discussed other IDE integrations that we have, and those can be found in the PC-lint Plus documentation. All of the integrations are laid out there and have very thorough steps, as well as stuff you can copy paste over to set these up really easily. And once again, those could be found in sections 2.3.16 through 2.3.21. So please check those out if you have any more questions or are interested in the other integrations. Please stay tuned for the next video where we will be going over the new PC-lint Plus View feature, which is new with PC-lint Plus 2025. It's a front-end GUI. It's very easy to set up, and I think a lot of people will be interested in seeing what that looks like. So please stay tuned for that. Thank you once again for watching, and have a good one.